What is up, my Lorcana Goons? Welcome to the Lorcana Goons channel. My name is Kevin, and we're going to talk about some Lorcana stuff. Today, we have a gang of deck lists. We have a parliament, a gaggle, if you will. I'm going to go over four different tournaments, and I have Zach Stone here to help me out. And I have Zach Stone for a variety of reasons. He is a Lorcana Goon, just like myself, but not only that, he is a really good card game player. When it comes to any other card game, specifically Yu-Gi-Oh!, Zach Stone has a variety of credentials, and I feel like I value his perspective a lot. So you should too, if you are a Lorcana Goon. How you doing, Zach?
Doing quite well, doing quite well. It's a pleasure to be with you again. I'm here for the market watches, but I'm also here for the deck list, guys.
Heck yeah. So we have the Coliseum of Comics tournament to go over, as well as the Dark Sphere Win a Case tournament. And then we even have the Cerberus Den 1K, and then the 20 Lore.pro tournament that happened online. So three local tournaments that were pretty big, some of them consisting of 20 plus players, as high as I think 40 to 50 some players, and then a Pixelborn tournament that had more than 100 players, I believe. And they're going to have more tournaments from 20 Lore Pro. So shout out all of these wonderful hosts for the Lorcana scene right now, because right now it's a very grassroots scene. We don't have an official Lorcana scene, so all of these tournaments are really from locals and from like the player-based community. And then I even have some deck lists to go over that we can talk about from some local goons that have been seeing some success at their LGS. Okay, we have first place Alex Hansen playing an Amber Steel Wheel deck. So we've seen this deck before. It looks pretty standard, playing cards like Whole New World, Strength of a Raging Fire, Let the Storm Rage On, all at 4 with Cinderella and whatnot. I know you play this deck in real life, Zach Stone. What's your opinion on this?
This deck has definitely got some interesting tech choices, I would say. Choosing to play one Rapunzel and three Tragic Hero Beasts, I feel like evens out that ratio of some, stagnant draw power. They are playing the four wheel, I would say, but it's a whole new world. And as well as seeing to let the storm rage on, you have enough efficient ways of cheating out characters pretty quickly with your shift stitches, your shift Cinderellas, and your shift queens, and not to forget about Lantern. So there are plenty of ways to play a whole new world before turn 5. I think World's Greatest Criminal Mind might have been a tech choice, and I see it going in and out of certain deck lists.
I think
So,
it's a flex spot. I
depending on your meta, you can see cards like that in Benja.
Oh yeah, been being swapped out, right? That's kind of the thing. I mean, and this is the reason why Sad Boy Beast is going to be a $30+ legendary, but we'll talk about that in the Market Watch on Fridays and Mondays. But hey, this deck is really good. I think this deck is always going to be a contender in the meta as long as we have cards like Ariel and Whole New World to really make those cards shine. But we have second place with Chad Claire using the Ketchup Mustard Red and Yellow. One of my favorite color combinations. This deck looks pretty awesome. I like seeing decks like this in second place, and I believe this was one of the decks that I mentioned in my video that was, it's almost a month old now, and I said what 5 decks you should expect in your meta coming Rise of the Floodborn, and this was one of them. You know, Mother Gothel Rapunzel comboing off as 4 ofs in the deck along with Stitch, the Queen, Simba. We're also playing 4 of the Minnie Mouse Surfer, Maleficent Dragon, Big Lady Tremaine, Rockstar Stitch, Surfer Stitch, Maui, the Queen, and Mufasa. The only 2 elves we're playing in this deck is going to be Queen of Hearts, Stone with Rush, and then we have 3 Doc to round off that entire deck list. Super consistent. Oh look, 3 Lantern as well. Forgot to mention that one, but very consistent. It's looking like if you get your Mufasa to go off, you're never gonna miss unless you hit a Lantern, right? And if you already have the 3 Lanterns in rotation, you're not gonna miss with that Mufasa ever. Oh wow, how you thinking about this one?
So I do like the Mufasa synergy with cards like Tremaine, Surfer Stitch, and Maleficent Dragon. It can go off with Rapunzel, however, it does need to have that more of that requirement, and so do the other characters too. Don't get me wrong. However, I think it's a little bit easier for your opponent to have established boards as well as you having a couple characters on your field as well. Um, Doc is seeing a lot of play in a lot of Amber lists, whether you play Amber Ruby or Amber Steel. Doc is starting to be more a little favorable. He gets some lore value with 2 lore, and him reducing a character cost for 1. Again, just allows you to play cards like Mufasa on turn 4.
We'll go on to the third place list
Yeah.
right here. We have another Amber Steel. This was a top 4 list more so, but this was a Amber Steel list playing Sleepy's Flute. Now this has been a rising trend in the meta game right now with Sleepy's Flute after we saw it take first place at, I think it was the PPG, the best of one, if I'm not mistaken. And this deck is definitely threatening. I think this deck has a much better matchup against the Ruby Amethyst deck. Would you say you agree?
So I can agree that this deck has a very good matchup with Sleepy's Flute in the list for sure. World's Greatest Criminal Mind 2 is also a card that I see a lot of utility against that matchup. Getting rid of Maui's that stick on the board, as well as Maleficent Dragons that come down on past turn 9. And yeah, it's very common to see 3 Tragic Hero Beasts and 2 Tinkerbells in a lot of lists.
Hmm.
This seems like a more teched out version, I noticed too. It has Criminal Mind Ninja.
Yeah, as both Criminal Mind. They made room for both, and then there's enough songs in here to get you there with the Sleepy's Fruit, the Sleepy's Flute. It seems like another top 4 list though. This list is a little spicy. We have a Amethyst Emerald bounce deck. I check this out, man. I love seeing decks like this. This reminds me of last format, this color combination in particular. But we're utilizing cards like Genie, bounce, to make sure we can like get that bouncing going, because we can even bounce our own characters with Genie. Then you're also using Cusco. Everybody loves a good Cusco deck. But it's very aggressive playing cards like Enchantress and Flint Rider. I haven't tested this deck out myself. I want to try something out like this. I've played against this on Pixelborn, and it doesn't seem too threatening in my opinion, depending like on what deck you're playing, right? But I think if this deck goes first and you pair up correctly, yeah, you can definitely get some dubs with it. I like the addition of Merlin Crab too. We've been seeing Merlin Crab kind of in the Ruby Amethyst meta, so maybe it's just overall in the Amethyst meta.
Yeah, and also Enchantress is a very strong character, and in addition with the Merlin Crab, giving that character a big buff is pretty good. I just like Cusco again. That's one of my favorite cards. And Jasper is starting to just become very underrated as always.
Hmm.
Seeing characters like Arthur from Questing is very, very good in any Amethyst matchup. And being able just to have like a strong enough body to survive against a lot of these removal cards, and being 4 willpower that survives against a 3-cost smash is very good. The only downfall I think really is that like outside of the early to mid game, he's one of the worst cards in the late game, really just generating no value, because by then you need cards that are like giving you a lot more lore and not preventing your your opponent's characters from questing.
The Merlin and Min package is so aggressive. You know what I mean? So I have lost to this deck. Now that I think about it, I was like getting flashbacks. Like, oh yeah, somebody did use Hans to quest for 3. Then they bounced their Hans and my own character, and then they played the Hans again. And I was just like, oh my goodness, that is a very, very strong play to do. And I feel like the Merlin the Merlin and Mim package kind of lets you play other engines too. I like seeing it in this Emerald Amethyst. We'll go on to our top 8, so this would be like 5th through 8th place on the servers. Then 1K Mike Sad playing 1 copy of Sad Beast, bro. Come on, Mike Sad, you need more copies of Sad Beast in this deck. But this deck looks pretty consistent in my opinion, aside from maybe the 1 Sad Beast and the 2 Surfer Stitch and 2 Benja. Everything else looks like it's being played of about 4, but we got 3 Cinderellas and 3 Strength of a Raging Fire. But well, we won't spend too much time on Mike's side because we've seen lists like this before. This is an Amber Steel list. We know what it does. It tries to use Whole New World as fast as possible, and then boom, next person we have Markeith Benin also playing a version of Amber Steel, but this is this is more of a Sleepy's Flute version, capitalizing on maxing out on 4 Grab Your Swords, 4 Whole New World, 4 Strength of a Raging Fire, and 4 Let the Storm Rage On. Oh, there's even 2 Be Our Guest as our songs, man. Gotta love the Amber Steel love. But I'm more partial to some aggro decks, like the next this would be like the 7th place, I believe, Dusty Sorensen. We have a Amethyst Amber deck list. This is the hyper aggro is what you would call it, right, Zach Stone? A deck that is really meant to end the game as fast as possible. Do you like decks like these?
I think decks like these are very healthy for a card game because they're very easy to play. A lot of players that are very new to card games in general will have a better time playing a deck like this than playing like a control deck like the Bounce Ruby Amethyst deck,
Mhm.
or even like the Amber Steel Song deck, which requires a not even like a use of your cards correctly, but more of like an understanding of the matchups and like how to like sequence certain things. And plus, there's a lot of math involved in that deck, whereas this deck is just kind of more like how much you can count to 20 and how easily you can count to 20. There are some things that you'll have to learn as you play the game, like bouncing certain characters and setting up certain lines of play. In this specific list, we see four befuddle, and I think what they're trying to do is they're trying to see cards that allow them to reset their own characters a little bit easier. Having cards like Dock allow you to bounce your characters and play them back even cheaply or for free if they're one costed. So I really do think that that's where they were going with it. In addition to the three Rockstar Stitch, they are playing Be Our Guest.
Yeah, I am very partial to this combination with befuddles. With the aggressive amethyst package, just like you said, basically being able to pay a one ink like ready your character. I believe Fan the Flames is that card, or it costs one, or but you could also use befuddle on your opponent's cards too. When they start to get a little bit out of hand, or even if you want to like throw them off curve, you can befuddle a Sleepy's Flute. I know that's a very strong play because you're able to set up a one in character and befuddle, and they have to play like Sleepy's Flute off curve on turn 3 or something if you're trying to do stuff like that. But the Amethyst packages is just everywhere. We even have our next top 8 player with an Amethyst Steel deck, a Amethyst Steel mid range by Will Martinez, top 8 in the Cerberus Den 1K, playing 4 of the following: Captain Hook, Maleficent Sorceress, Benja. We got 4 Sad Boy Beast, Yzma, Giant Tinkerbell, friends on the other side. Let the storm rage on. Then we have 3 of the following: Cinderella Knight in Training, Jafar. Wow, that's gonna be the 2 ink Jafar. Prince Eric. 3 of the Merlin Goat. 3 Ursula, Elsa, Spirit of Winter, Smash, and Grab Your Sword. That's gonna be the 3 ofs. And last, we're gonna have 2 Cinderella Stout-Hearted and 2 Strength of a Raging Fire to round that deck off. He doesn't even play the Jafar shift. Interesting. I guess we're just playing the 3/2 characters to combat evasives, right?
3/2s are not bad too in the meta. However, I do believe that the evasive is very strong against the Surfer Mini, which a lot of Ruby decks are playing.
Yeah, overall, I like this deck style because, like you said, it's not playing Whole New World, and it's not doing that kind of
Oh, I'm
combo.
sorry. There is no cards that bounce. There is no cards that bounce in this deck. I am so sorry.
No,
No. It is just a removal based deck.
yeah,
Yes, this is like a stun deck.
yeah. There you go. That's a really good way to put it. It's a stun deck. So, and I like it a lot because I think it does have a lot of capability going against the Ruby Amethyst, which is the most popular deck in the format. The steel cards right now, like Smash, Grab Your Swords, Fire the Cannons, Let the Storm Rage on. Like I can go on. They do a lot against the lingering foxes, snakes, and rabbits. And overall, like, it just adds pressure. Sad Beast is just so good. It's so good right now, man. There's very few outs to getting rid of the readied Sad Beast. But yeah, you have to play around Ruby Amethyst this format, so much so that this next tournament consists of 4 Ruby Amethyst and even 4 Amber Steels in their top 8. We have the Dark Sphere Winning Case tournament. We're not going to spend too much time on this because, hey, we know what Ruby Amethyst and Amber Steel are looking like this format. But first place, shout out Tang Mom. They got a deck list consisting of 4 Cinderella Ballroom Sensation, Stitch, Queen Goons, Simba, Cinderella, Ariel, the Queen, Stitch Rockstar, Giant Tink at 2, Cinderella Stout-Hearted at 4, Let the Storm Rage on, Strength of a Raging Fire, Whole New World, Grab Your Swords, and Sleepy's Flute. All of those at 4, and then Be Our Guest and Giant Tink, like I said, at 2. Very consistent version of that deck. But then we have second place right here playing a deck that looks a little bit, different than some of the other Ruby Amethyst lists we've seen. This is Benjamin Pete playing Merlin Khan. I like this. This is very interesting. So it's a Sheer Khan based deck, and it's playing the Fairy Godmother. We also have the combination of cards that let you kind of OTK your opponent with Madame Mim and LeFou, and then the loop that lets you ready stuff. We're not playing the Dr. Facilier, but you're able to utilize that stuff with Sheer Khan to kind of gain extra lore. This list is kind of interesting. What do you think about this one? I'm kind of liking this one.
I don't like it. I don't like it. This deck seems too sacky. but I think it is cool and it's interesting. I would prefer some different ratios. I have to admit, what does Namari do? I think this deck's very interesting for a main reason that like there's the one of the Felicia, the Minnie Mouse, as well as the Yzma, Elsa, Maleficent, and the Fairy Godmother. Uh, I don't know why they like to play one ofs. I feel like when you see them, they're gonna be more of like a sack. Like yeah, you got lucky drawing it, not in like a negative way, but that yeah, you negatively impact your draws, in my opinion. And they chose to play like multiple copies of like Scar and multiple copies of Shift Mim. But I gotta say that the concept with this deck I feel like is not necessarily to like benefit off those cards. It's to benefit off the Shire Khan.
True.
The Namari is interesting, being a removal character. I see no Maui's in this list as well, so that one's a little interesting. So
That's
I
a
don't know.
little.
They got second place with it.
Yeah.
And
The
don't get me wrong, but
the Maui one is
this is
interesting
a
because
weird deck.
I would have thought Maui was good with the Shere Khan, right? But this is a weird deck for sure. The numbers are interesting. If anybody knows Benjamin Pete, or if you want to go ahead and drop a comment and explain to us the theory behind, maybe it's big brain and we're just too little brain to understand it. But we'll go on to some other more. This is no, this is a more traditional Ruby Amethyst. Rafiq Sadi playing a list that looks very reminiscent to some of the stuff we've seen in Ruby Amethyst. But I do want to make some notes in the meta that are happening right now. People are playing Pinocchio Talkative Puppet. That is the 2 ink uninkable with only one that only quests for one. And people are playing him because he's basically like a small version of Elsa. You play him, you target an opposing character, and you exert it. So that means if I have a snake on board and you have a little Cinderella that is readied, if I play the Pinocchio, I can ready your Cinderella, and then my big snake just eats your Cinderella, dude. And then you're going to be sad because Pinocchio is pretty good in my opinion. Another thing I've noticed that's happening in the Ruby Amethyst meta is the addition to Merlin Crab that we're kind of seeing in play. I don't really like Merlin Crab. I don't see the point, but maybe it makes cards like Minnie Mouse just a little bit better to be able to out certain things either on play or when it leaves the field. Have you seen any application for Merlin Crab in your opinion, Zach? Because I mean, this is probably only the first as I've seen it in, but I've been seeing it on Pixelboard now.
I've definitely seen the Merlin Crab pop up in a lot more decks than I'd like to admit. I don't know. I don't know if it's more of the basis behind his stats just being like well rounded. 3 cost 3/3, but
True.
getting 3 strength is probably good against certain characters early on, like the Rockstar Stitch, right? So if
Mm.
you already have the Merlin Crab up, you threaten like certain characters by playing the Fox.
I think it's funny how Merlin Crab has just completely power crept every single 3 ink 3/3 character in the game because it's just it just has those stats. But this next list, not playing Merlin Crab, but playing some interesting ratios as well. A Ruby Amethyst playing 3 Broom. Shout out Christopher with a K Bautista. I love that name. But anyway, so they got 3 Brooms in here, a Broom Goon indeed. We're playing one Pinocchio of the one that gains 3 lore, and only one Spellbook and one Scar. I don't like one of Zen Lorcana, one Little Tremaine, one Arthur. I gotta say it, it's just not my favorite thing to play one of Zen Lorcana. Like you said it earlier, I agree with you. Very, very sacky. In some decks, it could make sense because of the way you kind of cycle your cards, but even then, like I'm just not big on it. You know what I mean? This deck, you can't search through your deck, and there's no point in playing one of when and in this scenario it doesn't look like it, but we have a Amber Steel list by Francis Puis. This was the King of Swiss, apparently. Probably got first place in Swiss playing Amber Steel Flute. Nothing too different here. There's 3 flutes instead of 4, and there's 4 Benja. So 4 Benja probably seems like a good idea when the rest of the meta is on Sleepy's Flute and multiple spell books. Because if we look back at the rest of the tournament of top 4 that we've gone through so far, they're all playing Sleepy's Flute and spellbook or a type of. So to be able to play 4 Benja, yeah, that makes sense. So King of Swiss probably got first place in Swiss because of that 4 Benja. And then our next list only playing to Benja by Yang Fang Wang, a Steel Song Lantern deck. A little bit more of that traditional kind of mid-range thing going with lanterns and Surfer Stitches. Not necessarily the Sleepy's Flute version, but hey, if you guys don't want to play Sleepy's Flute, looks like you can still play this version, but the Sleepy's Flute seems like it's becoming the most popular. And then to round it off, we have a Ruby Amethyst deck. This one is playing the most diabolical scheme. That's something to note that is being changed in the meta a little bit, along with the small version of Lady Tremaine, which kind of deducts the lore. But that Pinocchio again, look, we see Pinocchio Talkative Puppet once again. Marlon Bayer Rager, shout out you for this Ruby Amethyst bounce list playing Pinocchio and Diabolical Scheme. I see Diabolical Scheme a lot on Pixelborn. It's just a way to be able to sing Dragonfire almost. And the fact that we have such low cost villains now, like Lady Tremaine and Maleficent Sorceress, very crucial to using cards like Diabolical Scheme, because it basically just, it makes the value on it so much better, because you're playing Maleficent for 3, you draw a card, next turn you can sing that same Maleficent, get rid of it, and then banish a character. It's like an early Dragonfire, so pretty awesome in my opinion. And then last we have William Garthside with a Steel Song Flute, another flute deck. Wow, so many flutes in this Dark Sphere Win-A-Case tournament. You goons are crazy, but man, it's not even the beginning of it, because now we have the Coliseum of Comics 1.5k. We only have 7 lists from this, but unfortunately 5 out of the 7 lists are Ruby Amethyst. And I say unfortunately for the sake of the content. I love a good meta. You know what I mean? I love when we have an established meta, because that means that you can go out of your way and make some anti-meta decks, right? Okay, so we got more crabs in the Amethyst set. Ruby Amethyst list, but we also have a Amethyst Steel that ended up in not second place. So they split the finals for this tournament actually. So Coliseum of Comics 1.5k, the finalists split. So these both are technically first place. And check this out, Sackstone. They're playing Goons. Love this list. Gotta go over it because it's playing 4 of the following: Captain Hook, Sad Boy Beast, Merlin the Goat, and friends on the other side, and that's it. And then we have 3 of the following Archimedes, Goons, shout out the Lorcana Goons, Madam M Snake, Prince Eric. We also have Pinocchio Talkative Puppet, Madam M Fox, Maleficent Sorceress. We have the 3 Inky Yzma, Benja, Tinkerbell Tiny Tactician, Merlin Rabbit, Yzma Scary Beyond Reason, Giant Tinkerbell, and Grab Your Swords. All of those cards at 3 in this deck. And to round it off, 2 Fire the Cannons, because why not? Because you need to be able to fire the cannons at Cinderella every now and then, you know, the ballroom sensation. I like this version of this list, mainly because it's playing Goons. You know what I mean? Any deck that's playing Goons, I got to appreciate. But there's a lot
Shout
of
out the Goons.
yeah, there's a lot of 3-ofs. A lot of 3-ofs in this list. I wonder why. I wonder if that's like a good ratio to play certain cards, because normally I want to like argue to play like, you know, 3 small Tinkerbell, 4 big Tinkerbell, but it doesn't seem like it was needed, man. What do you think of this list? It's definitely a mid-range package that'll get you there. And shout out to the Format 1 cards like Archimedes, Hook, and Prince Eric that are seeing a return in our meta.
I think what's really strong too is I think something that's important to mention is Talkative Puppet and the Tinkerbell Giant Fairy interaction, when a lot of people are trying to play around that card by not challenging or exerting with certain characters. It won't matter. And it is playing the Shift Yzma, which allows you to sing the songs a little bit early. So without playing the whole new world package, this is just kind of going more for like a tempo version. I am a huge fan of the Prince Eric still. I think that card's very good into this meta, being like a 1/3 that can't die to Teeth and Ambitions and still being able to challenge the snake.
Yeah, not just Teeth and Ambitions, it also doesn't lose out to like let the Storm Rage on, and it takes a lot more to lose out to Strength of a Raging Fire, which I've noticed are obviously really popular in Amber Steel, and this deck is not playing. You know what I mean? And it's cool because I really do like cards like Hook and Eric right now. It's gonna out the opposing Madam M Snake, the Madam M Fox, you know, all these characters that have 3 willpower. Prince Eric is gonna be able to handle and still survive a lot of the extra damage that gets kind of thrown around at it. So tempo is very important right now in Lorcana. It's the name of the game, I think, in my opinion. But Hey, now we have some Ruby Amethyst list for you. Shout out the top four, Corey Patrick. This list doesn't look like anything too crazy, just playing the average, Merlin package with the Surfer minis. There's three Ursula, so this is the second
Too
list.
crazy. It's got Dragonfire.
Yeah, I was gonna say there's three Ursula and three Dragonfire. This is the first list we see with Dragonfire instead of like something like a most diabolical scheme, and then Ursula at three. That's kind of new, or do you think people still playing Ursula?
I gotta say, man, he's choosing to play less Tremaines and less Yzmas,
Hmm.
and more copies of Befuddle and sorry, adding cards like Befuddle and Dragonfire and Ursula into the deck. Also, three Merlin Rabbit and only two Olaf. They are playing the Minnie Mouse, however, I have noticed him just like four and four across the board. Just to get that Madam Mim snake online. What are your thoughts on only playing six one cost characters and not maxing out on cards like the Tremaine and not maxing out cards like the Rabbit and not playing cards like Arthur?
Yeah, so that's another thing too, is that being able to differentiate between which like matchup you're going up against. Because like you pointed out this deck list isn't playing Arthur, right? And if you're playing a best of three and you see your opponent play all of game one and you don't see a single Arthur, and then you kind of see all the other cards like Dragonfire, and Ursula, you can safely assume it's more of a mid range to control ish base deck. In general, the Amethyst engine is just aggressive. That's just like a natural part of the Amethyst engine. And the Surfer Mini kind of helps put that pressure. But outside of that, this list is just very control based. You know what I mean? Whereas some of the other ones that play Arthur, when you see your opponents play Arthur, a Pinocchio, maybe the One Ink Maleficent, now you know that they're sacrificing cards like Dragonfire or like Diabolical Scheme. They're sacrificing those later game cards to be able to, do a different strategy. And in terms of cards like Lady Tremaine and Scary Yzma, I think they're very good. Yzma being just a little bit more, I think, impactful in a deck like this. The problem with Tremaine is that now that we're very well into the meta, a lot of players are just playing around Tremaine. Most of the time on turn six, you'll notice like if when you play like somebody who plays a lot, they definitely don't want to play just one character on your turn six because they know that Tremaine's coming down. So I think after realizing that like a lot of the better players are starting to play around it, certain players are just cutting it out of their deck because it's not as impactful as it was in the beginning of the format when you kind of had to learn to play around it. You know what I mean? But an interesting take nonetheless. Our next one, for example, this one's playing a Pinocchio, the two of the Pinocchio that quest for three, and it's playing a little bit more. One just playing the Merlin Crab, more of the evasive mini. So I would even categorize this one still more in the like aggressive kind of side because it's also like taking advantage of cards like that. But a lot of the Ruby Amethyst lists kind of stick within the same ratios of the Amethyst cards, kind of the same way the Amber Steel Flute decks, like our next list right here by Natalie Rosario. So shout out this person for getting top four or top eight at the Coliseum of Comics. But we've seen these lists before, so I'm not going to spend too much time. They are playing Zero to Hero though. That is an interesting take, I think, on the deck, but don't really see the point of playing Zero to Hero over something like Lantern. I think Lantern is just better in a deck like this personally, but maybe we'll start seeing some spicy text. In terms of this deck, yeah, obviously Zero to Hero is going to help with that Sleepy's Flute win condition, but you'll know you're playing a Sleepy's Flute deck when you see the Sleepy's Flute deck. Trust, it plays a little bit more aggressive and it just kind of tries to squeeze out those wins on you. But I really do feel like this deck isn't as powerful as some make it seem to be. It just kind of depends on the course of the meta, right? Our next top 8 list is another Ruby Amethyst. Like I said, very, very consistent with the other ones we've seen. This one is, like you mentioned, though, playing 4 and 4 of the mini and the Olaf across the board. We're seeing more Pinocchio Talkative Puppet. This is like the star of the show right now, dude. Pinocchio Talkative Puppet making waves in the Ruby Amethyst meta. So be prepared for that, pun intended. And then we have the Merlin Crab again on this one. Jonathan Hopkins. Wow, named after a college, if I'm not mistaken, right? So shout out you for this top 8 with the Pinocchio Talkative Puppet. I feel like, yeah, Pinocchio Talkative Puppet really doing its thing. Even in this next list, this person also playing only 3 Olaf and 3 mini. cutting out some early game cards for maybe some middle game strategy like Talkative Puppet and Merlin Crab. So I know you were saying we were seeing 4 and 4 across the board for the one drops, but this is where they're going. They're going into the crabs and the Talkative Puppet to be able to clear the opposing cards. Yeah, Pinocchio Talkative Puppet, pretty gas in my opinion. By the way, I want to point out the finalist was not playing Spellbook, and a lot of the other top 8 lists were playing Spellbook. So take that for what you will. But after that, we have our 20 Lore Pro tournament. This was hosted over the weekend. If you guys don't know 20 Lore Pro, go follow their Discord. A lot of the top Pixelborn players post in there. They stream their gameplay, and they host tournaments. And this tournament was probably one of the more competitive tournaments, mainly because when you play on Pixelborn, you have access to every card in the game, right? So, what do you think of that, Zach? I guess comparing the way you play on Pixelborn compared to playing in real life.
I have to say that playing the way you play on Pixelborn it isn't necessarily like the comparable and can't translate to playing in real life because you get a little bit more of a knowledge. You're able to find out how many cards your opponent's mulligan. You may even have like inside knowledge of what they're playing just so based off past experiences too. And outside of that, there are a lot of better ways to remember like what they ink on Pixelborn because you can just write them down. You can't do that in real life. So Pixelborn tournaments I think you can gain a little bit more an advantage based on how more disciplined you are. Same thing would go if you are playing in real life. I just feel like the challenges are a little bit harder since there's a lot less that you can use to help you.
Yeah, I wholeheartedly agree. I think it's just a different meta space in general, playing online, and you can't really compare it like entirely to like what you're gonna see at locals or how you're gonna experience locals. So, if you're somebody who plays a lot of Pixelborn, like try not to let that either sway you one way or the other. In my opinion, I do think Pixelborn is an amazing practice tool, and I think if you have the ability to enter these tournaments, you definitely should. This was a free tournament. Top 4 was all Ruby Amethyst, and the rest of top 8 was 2 Amber Steel, 1 Ruby Amethyst, and 1 Hyper Aggro Amber Amethyst by Bjorn Fott. Shout out everybody who got top 8. It's looking like in the top 4, the Ruby Amethyst decks, there's a couple different differences, but again, we're seeing 3 of them playing the Pinocchio Talkative Puppet. One of them is playing Hey Hey in their top 8 list. A couple copies, 3 copies of Hey Hey actually in that list. A cool card. The first place list was playing Rafiki actually. So check that out. I like Rafiki in a top 8 list, right? Bad Wolves. Ruby Amethyst is the most popular deck I would say played, and I think if you're playing Ruby Amethyst, you need to master the mirror match, or if not master the mirror match, consider what stuff you can play in your deck to maybe help you out in which you think would be beneficial in the mirror match. Maybe Rafiki's help, maybe him playing the Peter Pan Shadow helped in the mirror match for Bad Wolf or something like that. Lizard Kitty, I feel like I've played against Lizard Kitty on ladder. Okay, a lot of these names are actually, I'm recognizing them, so that's kind of cool. Is playing Lizard Kitty, by the way, is playing Pascal and LeFou and Arthur's, for example, and that's more of an aggressive package, I think. So if your strategy is to go for a more aggressive line by playing cards like Arthur, stick to that strategy in your deck building. You know what I mean?
They're interesting. I can't help but feel like the Amber Steel lists are all kind of going after the same like strategy. A lot of the decks too, I believe, are like geared towards like removal based, and also you see a one list have the Snow White's package. I think that one's pretty cool. What do you think about the Snow Whites?
I like Snow White. I felt like the card was underrated when it came out. Obviously, if it was inkable, it'd be so much better. But being able to grab your important cards back, like Rapunzel or even like Surfer Stitch, when you're kind of grinding it out against Ruby Amethyst, kind of does make sense. It used to be that you were able to outvalue the Ruby Amethyst control deck all the time, every time, but just the way the Merlin and Mim engine works, it just naturally generates them so much lore and advantage, and and sometimes you just run out of resources. So I do like the idea of being able to shift into your Snow White a little earlier. your whole new world becomes a lot better, because if you're ever getting rid of cards that you just didn't want to get rid of, like a Benja for example, it lets you get it back. And the moment it starts gaining you more than one card, oh, that value is just too good, you know what I mean? Whereas comparing it to something like Hades last format, in order for you to like quote unquote Hades loop your opponent, you had to have multiple Hades, and you had to make sure you kept one in the grave all the time, you know. And it was always this kind of thing of like, oh, gotta make sure my Hades gets my Hades. And Snow White doesn't really see that issue. It's just more like if it can like survive on the board, which I feel like it really can against the Ruby Amethyst list, because it does have a willpower of 5, so it doesn't lose to the Fox. It only loses to Maui, and sometimes you do kind of bait out the Maui a little earlier on in the game. But yeah, overall, interesting tournament results. We're gonna go over some local Goon tournaments though, because Pixelborn is not the end all be all. The online meta is something, but hey, you could also get some good results playing local tournaments. So I have a list right here from Traverse Tavern. They're a really cool YouTube channel. Shout out them. They went undefeated, I believe. Yeah, undefeated. With it's 5 rounds. Wow, undefeated 5 rounds with this Amethyst Amber deck list that looks a little bit different than some of the other ones we've been seeing today. So this isn't like a hyper aggressive Amber deck list, Amber Amethyst list. This is more of a mid-range looking like control, not control, but looks more like a mid-range Amber Amethyst. What do you think? I like this one actually. It's playing 3 Hades and only 1 Snow White, and they put Snow White for part of your world. It felt smooth. Hades went crazy today, he said. So interesting. I was just talking down on Hades, and this guy saying Hades was really good, and his matchups were Steel Song, Ruby Amethyst Control, Ruby Amethyst Midrange, Healing Turbo, Alice Combo. So, yeah, 5 rounds undefeated in a tournament. That's really cool. Second, another locals, and he went. This is the second time he went undefeated with this tournament. What do you think of this?
So I think that there's a little bit of synergy with the Madam Mim being able to play your Hades for free and get the character back and has Rush. That's cool, and I do like that. Um, he included Peter Pan's Shadow as well. Interesting. He's playing the baby Elsa. I want to know what that made him choose that character in his list. Um, if there's something that I'm not really like, something I'm not aware of, but I feel like the talkative puppet might just do a little bit better for the deck.
Mm-hmm. Could be the amount of inkable count, but do you sacrifice? Maybe even go 2 and 2. I don't know, but I like that it's playing the Madam Mim song as well. That's really cool that you mentioned that synergy, being able to use like the on play ability of Hades, in combination with the Madam Mim shift or that song. And congrats to you, Traverse Tavern, on this awesome deck list, showing us once again that if you are a local Goon, you can see some results with whatever you see fit, bro. We have another list by Raising TCG 3-0 at a 3-0 at Clovis Cards Comics with another Ruby Amethyst deck list, very similar to the one we just saw. So hey guys, be on the lookout for this at locals. It's looking like the Pixelborn meta is it looks like the in real life meta is catching up to like some of the Pixelborn trends. You know what I'm saying? Because this is basically the same list that we just saw: 3 Dock, 3 Lantern, only 2 Queen of Hearts with a Rush, but 4 of everything else. Love to see it. Then we have another local Goons. Last but not least, I want to give a shout out to Earl Meister. Check this guy's channel out. He streams a lot on Twitch. He goes to locals a lot, and he oftentimes posts his results on Twitter. So give him a follow. He's pretty dope. He got second place with Emerald Steel at his locals. This list playing a variety of cards, kind of like the Flynn package with the discard engine. Playing 4 Lucifer, 4 Sudden Chill, Hypnotize, Giant Tinkerbell, Sad Beast. We're playing 4 of the Shiftable Jafar, Donald Duck, Daisy Duck, Hook, both Flynn's. We're also playing 4 Prince John and 4 Bucky. Then after that, we have 3 of the Shiftable Flynn, 3 Tinkerbell Tiny Tactician. There's going to be 2 Captain Hook, the Shiftable and Inkable, and that's going to round off that deck. Now, Zach, I know you are a pilot of the discard engine yourself. What do you think of this combination of cards?
Steel Emerald is a good combination of cards, and I feel like if you played the Steel Emerald, that your discard engine is more of like a bonus. They aren't getting to utilize. I feel like they're not utilizing certain cards a little bit better. Like I'm forgetting the name of it. Grab your swords and other removal cards.
Yeah.
Because I feel like once they have an established board, once they're starting to get rid of cards out of their hand, you don't have a way of punishing them by getting rid of their characters off of the field.
Hmm.
However, it's pretty solid in terms of like like the
What you're trying to
card
do.
choices. Their unequalables are their unequalables are only at 13, I think, or
Oh wow.
yeah, at 13. So it's not bad.
Yeah, I like it. Interesting that you mentioned that there isn't grab your swords and cards like that. Because when I gravitate to steel, I immediately start throwing those cards in the deck, you know. But it just adds to the uninkable pool. And maybe you are just relying on four giant Tinkerbell. That could just be all you need, like to an extent. But once again. Go to locals, try your ideas out. Euromeister went again to another locals. He went 3-0 the day after with a different steel variant. Check this out. I love this guy. He's like the epitome of like we're gonna cook up some goo and we're gonna spice up the locals this weekend. You know what I mean? Only playing one of the shiftable Jafar. Very interesting. Not sure why. One sorcerer spellbook, but I love a deck that's playing Pinocchio Talkative Puppet. So like we've seen this is like the card of the meta right now. And then he's even playing 3 Lawrence. So Lawrence is a 3 ink character, has 0 strength, 4 willpower, quest for 2, and if he's undamaged, his strength goes up all the way to 4. So I think Lawrence is kind of nice actually. So you play him on turn 3, he's a 4/4 that quest for 2. You just keep questing with him, apply some pressure. And this deck is kind of cool. Another take on the Amethyst Steel. So if you guys like the Amethyst Steel concept, take a gander, take a screenshot, test this out at your locals. Even playing the small Elsa, so you can shift into the big Elsa. Huh? What do you think of that, Zach?
Well, that one makes a lot of sense instead of just playing the baby Elsa with no shiftable Elsa. Also, Lawrence being able to be bounced and played again just gives him a
Ah,
lot of utility, and
yeah.
I'm a big fan of Lawrence right now.
Yeah, Lawrence is good, man. When I read it in the starter deck, I was just like, "What? This card is actually nice." In general, the Amethyst Steel starter deck, I still strongly feel is just such a good starter deck for the meta. You can give that to a new player and give them 2 of them, combine the deck, and they can kind of take it to locals and get some dubs. I'm sure of it. And yeah, the meta right now is very catered to playing around Ruby Amethyst. So because of that, you're able to play cards like Lawrence, which have really high value against the Ruby Amethyst engine almost. That 4 strength is crazy, or just gaining that 2 lore and being able to reset it, man. So yeah, overall the meta is gravitating towards just playing around Ruby Amethyst, kind of like the way we had to play around Surfer Stitch last format, you know what I mean? Or like Whole New World or Rapunzel and things like that. And I definitely think that we're able to adapt. We can see it in these deck lists, and there's a lot more tournaments coming up. So it's not the end all be all of Lorcana, right, Zach Stone?
It's funny enough when you have a 3v3 in this game that people are inspired to make each team play all the colors. And you have Amber Steel and you have Ruby Amethyst being just dominant decks, which leaves Emerald Sapphire the only like colors left. So making those colors work, I feel like, is where I'm at right now.
And yeah, we were talking about how when you're making any deck right now, you literally just have to like figure out how to combat the Merlin Madam Mim package alongside cards like Maui, Lady Tremaine, and it's still a fun format. I'm liking it a lot because again, I'm making my decks, and I think a lot of the times these little meta choices that you're able to the cards you're able to pick and choose, like whether or not you're playing Sleepy's Flute that week or Spellbook and all that stuff, kind of does change week to week, and again, and also it just depends on where you're playing. If your local meta is very adaptive or it's very slept on, then it just really depends on where you're playing. So any final thoughts though on the meta scene, Zach Stone?
Everyone is kind of in full belief that it's Ruby Amethyst meta. And don't get me wrong, the deck's very strong, very powerful, but you can get away with a lot of different decks, as you can see here. We saw Amber Ruby take in a lot of spots, and we saw a couple people try out some Steel Amethyst decks. So definitely get inspired, definitely try out some stuff, and as always, stay tuned to Lorcana Goons.
All right, goons, thanks again for watching. Remember to like, comment, and subscribe if you are a Lorcana goon, and we will see you goons next time.